So it occurred to me that it's been a little while since I put out an instructional video here on the channel. I did do some teaching while I was down in Costa Rica, and if you watch the Costa Rica video from a couple weeks ago, you can see some sequences that I taught. But I haven't really put out any kind of standalone video related to jiu-jitsu technique. So I thought I would pull out a chunk from my latest instructional course called Old Guy Cheat Code and present it to the channel for free. This is the side control top module. Side control is one of my most effective and dominant positions. I love side control top because I can usually get the finish from that position. So I explain how I like to approach it, how I like to control, and how I like to work my way toward a finish. I hope you enjoy it and get something out of it. And by the way, if you are not a subscriber of the channel, we are closing in on 50,000 subscribers, and you can certainly help us get to that threshold. So if you're not a subscriber, I would appreciate it if you hit the subscription button. And while you're at it, hit the bell to be notified when I push out new content, usually every week. All right, enjoy. Let's talk about side control. This is really my most dominant position. It's my favorite place to be, if for no other reason than it allows me to what we call cook our opponent. Sometimes with those big, strong athletes, you have to be able to attach to them and you have to be able to make them tired. And the best way to make them tired is being on top of them, disrupting their breathing, making it hard for them so that they expend a lot more energy than you. And if you do it right, sometimes they'll actually invite you to advance your position because they can't really dislodge you. So when I'm thinking about side control, I think of this area as being a little bit too big of an area to try to dominate all at once. We think positionally in jiu-jitsu: back, side control, mount, guard, but those are kind of arbitrary distinctions. It's possible to subdivide the body into smaller chunks that allow you to have more incremental control so that you can get where you want to go. And so what I mean by that is that when I pass the guard, however I get past, the next waypoint that I'm thinking about is always the hip line. I need to get control of the hip. And really the hip is probably my most fertile place to control another human being. The source of our power is the hips. If you can deny your opponent the ability to use your hips, you're going to go a long way toward making them use a lot more energy than you. So when I get into side control, I need two attachment points. I need to be connected to the near side hip. I need to be connected to the far side hip. Now, I can be in a forward orientation like this and accomplish that. I can be down and accomplish that. I can even be facing backwards and accomplish that. Really, it's just about having one of my hip bones, or sometimes my knee, against one hip and then the arm against the other hip. And this becomes the battle. Can I hold on to him? Let's turn this way. A lot of times when I'm in this position, I will just drop my rear leg and I want to make myself as flat as possible so that the hip on one side is connected to the hip bone on Jordan's right side. And then I've got my elbow against his hip here and I can pull in, okay? He's gonna be moving around, he's gonna be trying to escape, and so I need to be able to just track that and prevent him getting his knee in. This is the entire battle right now. I have hip control, he wants to recover guard, which means usually he's trying to get a knee in, or he's trying to pummel for an underhook. So in order to prevent that, I have to just take up all the space. I like to drop that leg and come down. This works pretty well. Sometimes I'll be up like this, and I try to put my knee kind of into the legs a little bit so that I can connect here. So sometimes I'll be here, and I really want to kind of tuck in deeply so that I can take up all that space. Sometimes I'll just be here like this in kind of a kazuri case. I got them in position where my hip is against his hip and my arm is connecting. You have to be able to switch between those three orientations based on the reality that he's presenting as he tries to escape. So he's moving around. I'm tracking. I'm just tracking. I'm trying to be heavy on him. I'm not really too worried yet about what I'm doing with this arm and the head. Ultimately, I need to begin controlling the shoulder line. That's the next position, the next point that's going to give me success here. Right now, I'm just trying to stabilize the hip line. And so I'm driving into him. I'm connected. If he's one of these guys that's incredibly strong and he's likely to bench press you off, I will even lift up, wrap my arm underneath him, and with my hip, I'm doing the same thing. I'm connected on the back here, but I have an overwrap. This is incredibly difficult for him to escape from. Rare. It's rare for someone to escape when I've got this position. And if you really want to cook somebody and you really want to pressure them, you can take, here, move your arm. You can take your floating rib and put it into the solar plexus, right in the V here, the soft spot in between his ribs. I can take my rib cage, I can come up, I can get on my toes with my back, my feet on my toes, so that I can drive all my pressure into the sternum here and begin just making him suffer. If I can disrupt his breathing just a little bit, so he's not getting 100% of the air that he wants, maybe he's getting 70% of the air, well, over the course of a minute or two of doing that, he's going to be very compromised. And so I don't do this all the time. I reserve this for those big, strong guys that are very, very difficult to hold down. Most of the time, I'm content just having an elbow against the hip, having my own hip against his hip, whether that means my leg is down, whether that means my knee is up, or whether it means I'm in more of a Kesa position, or even sometimes we will switch and come to the other side. The principle at play here is just that we're connected to both sides of the hip so that everywhere he goes, I'm attached and I'm not going to let him get away, and I really want him to expend more energy than me. Okay, now that we've stabilized our hip control, we need to work ourselves up to a higher side control where I'm going to have more opportunities to attack for submissions. Here's the thing though, if he has his elbows and his arms in good position, if I try to sneak up here, I'm going to have this obstruction, and that's a problem for me. So my rule of thumb is I don't transfer to high side control until I can get this arm out of position. So I'm controlling him from side control. Maybe I'm pushing his head away. Maybe I've got my fist in the collar and I'm holding on. And I'm just waiting for this moment where I can either put my knee in and slide up, or a moment where maybe he brings this arm up naturally for some reason, and then I can slide up. Once this arm is out of position, I want to really pull him in, get a good cross face, good gable grip with my underhook, and now I'm ready to start working for submission. Okay, so I've got Jordan locked down in a high side control. Here's a little unexpected attack sequence that you can get by actually going even higher. So I'm going to take the crossface out, put the elbow on the other side, and then I want to just walk myself up even higher. You'd be surprised how dominant this position is. I can't let go of the underhook though. I've got a shoulder here, and that's what's going to prevent him from sneaking out the back here. But because this arm is now exposed, I have three options from here. Number one, if the arm is bent, I can turn it and we can get the Americana. Number two is I can straighten it and we can get a straight arm lock. Or number three, I can get a wrist lock. For that wrist lock, I'm just grabbing it with my thumb and middle finger right at the wrist and then turning it. People don't usually expect those submissions from that top side, and it can be very stifling and very dominant just to crush people here, even cover their face maybe, block their breath if you want to be really mean. Another option from this high side control is to attack for a near side armbar. People usually don't expect an armbar on this side. Everybody expects it on this side. Let me demonstrate what it looks like, and then we'll talk about the details, because it's a difficult armbar to get if you don't have the details right. Once the details are right, then it's fairly high percentage. So what I need to do is windshield wiper in, push the face away, step over. If the arm stays in the armpit, that's great. I can arm dart here, or if it comes out, we can get more of a standard arm bar. Okay, the two keys to making this work is, one, you need to windshield wiper your rear leg. So let me turn Jordan so you can see that motion. I'm here, I turn that leg in, totally parallel with him. Now I can push the head away so that he can't turn into me, and I can just sit back. That leg can step over, and then we can drop in and get the arm bar. So the key to making this work is that rear windshield wiper. I have to release a little bit of the crossface in order to fully windshield wiper in. Okay, so practice this motion until you're comfortable getting your leg all the way across the body. I don't know if you can see that from here. That's where we need to be, because that's what's going to allow me to then sit back. Once I've sat back, that leg can come over the top and we can get the arm bar, again, either in the armpit or come back and get it. Now, the second thing I do is I try to push that face away. Sometimes you have to multitask by controlling this arm, by just pinching it and then turn the face away. And that is what's going to prevent him from coming up into me and slipping that elbow in order to prevent the arm bar. So I can sit back, I can come up. I'm still holding with the other arm as well. Step over, and then we can catch and get our finish. Previously, we saw that if we can scoot ourselves up higher, we can get exposure here for a few things. But in doing so, we're potentially creating an escape path for our opponents in this direction if we lose control of this far side arm. But we can use that to our advantage by hitting a Darce choke. So I'm going to keep rotating and encourage him to roll and be ready to shoot my arm through. And then I need to just beat him, figure four, and we can get our Darce. Another option is a Scizor choke, and this works well whether we have the arm out of position or against guys that keep their elbows really in tight. They've got good arm discipline, good elbow discipline, and they're not really giving you anything. Maybe they're putting a lot of pressure on your neck, and they're just making it difficult to control this position. So what I can do is release the underhook and weave in, get myself a three-finger grip, which I'll talk about in a moment, get my elbows together, and scissor for the tap. Most jiu-jitsu practitioners are familiar with the gable grip. No thumbs, hands together. The problem with this grip is it's not great for a scissoring action when you need to put your two elbows together and you need to scissor with the blades of your wrists. A better option is the three-finger grip, where you're putting your thumb in between the peace sign, your thumb goes in, and then you get your grip. So practice that. Peace sign, thumb goes in, grip. Peace sign, thumb goes in, get your grip. And that grip is very strong, and it actually allows the two elbows to come together forcefully with the cutting edge of the two sides of your wrist coming together to get that good scissor action. Another advantage of having this arm out of position is it allows us to hit a bread cutter choke. So with a bread cutter, I'm going to take my far arm, come under the armpit, and get my hand, my four fingers into the collar. And then this hand is going to loop over and create a cutting action. So here's what it looks like. First, I'm going to simply put my thumb in the gi because I'm going to be able to roll it out when I need to without telegraphing. If I just bring it over the top and I try to insert my thumb that way, he's going to defend because I'm telegraphing it. So instead, I'm going to simply get my thumb in and get ready to go. Now I want to scoot maybe a little higher because I really want to control this arm. I'm putting downward pressure with my chest. Everything's tight and I can come underneath. 4 fingers in the collar. Now I've got it set up and I'm ready to go. I just need to loop out. I'm going to loosen it a little bit. Don't be too tight. If you're too tight, you're going to ratchet right across the trachea. That's not so nice. Loosen it a little bit. Now I can drop my elbow and I can begin flaring. So I'll loosen because it's a little hard to demonstrate this when I'm real tight. But the finish, I want to flare my elbow in this direction, turning his head away. And when I have it nice and tight and I flare, that's how we get the bread cutter. Let's look at another example with Devin to illustrate when your opponents punch their arm through. There's a popular escape called the ghost. That's a good time to set up the bread cutter. I'm going to lift him, get 4 fingers in the collar. Now I get my thumb in, make a loop, loosen a little bit so I can drop my elbow, sprawl and flare and get the tap. Let's look from the other side. He punches his arm through. I'm going to go in through his armpit to set up the bread cutter choke. Another option from this high side control with this arm out of position is the triangle choke. I pull him in nice and tight so I can control this arm. And now I need to just lift his head and step over. But if I do that, he's going to block. So I need to pin this far side arm. And the way I like to do that is just make a circle, pin, lift his head. I can now step over, nice and deep. The traditional way to finish a triangle choke is to actually triangle your legs together. To be honest, most of the time, I don't bother doing that when I'm on top, from a mounted triangle on top. When I'm on the bottom, of course, that's how we do it. But usually, I'm just gonna drop my knee. It's all about the squeeze in this direction. I squeeze and we can get the tap. Or of course, we can always do some arm manipulations. There's an Americana. There's a straight arm lock, maybe a wrist lock, whatever you want to do from there. So the big takeaway here is an incremental approach to side control. You start with hip control. I'm not in a hurry to get past the hip. I need to stabilize the position. I need my opponent to feel a little bit of hopelessness, like they can't get out, and then be sensitive to that moment when I can advance my position to a high side control, really focusing on getting this near side arm out of position. That's the key to a lot of these submissions that I've shown in this module. That's not the only way to play side control, but I'm having a lot of success with it because it's very tight and it's very stifling and it lets you get up very high up on your opponent, and it's very difficult for them to escape if you do it right. So be incremental, hips first. From the guard pass, hips first. Don't be in a hurry. If I don't get the submission, that's okay. I'm much more interested in being able to maintain the position and be dominant with my jiu-jitsu game. The submission's always just the cherry on top. So good luck with that, and I wish you success.